Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro friends. Today's episode of the podcast is supported by Elixir Specialty Coffee. Head to elixirspecialtycoffee.com and enter code IMAPITFORWARD to get 10% off your first purchase. Today on the Daily Coffee Pro, we are going to be talking about when situations don't end up exactly as you expected. And we're going to be talking about something very specific today. For lack of a better term, this is a moment that I had to eat shit. This is one of those moments that life teaches you something, and I am so happy that it did. I learned a lot from this instance and healed a relationship that I didn't even know was broken. So, what happened? All right, so I had it's been a great year for the podcast. We've had some incredible conversations. And I noticed that there was a comment that came through from somebody who had come on the podcast. And the comment was it was placed in a situation where I may or may not have ever ended up seeing it. And it just so happened that someone who was looking after some content for me passed it on and said, look, I know that you talk really highly about this person. I think you should kind of see this comment. So I did, and then reached out to that person thinking, because the comment was quite rude. And so I reached out to that person thinking, did I do something to upset this person? Have we got a problem? And so I reached out to them, and it turns out that we did have a problem that I was completely unaware of. And it turned out that this person got really upset with me because they came on the podcast, and once the podcast was finished, I didn't email them back. They never heard from me again. And in their words, I had ghosted them, and I felt mortified that this person had felt this way about me and about my actions. And I was so immediately apologetic because he said, I thought we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I gave you my time for a couple of hours. He was completely right. And then he thought I ghosted him. But what actually happened was, by that point, we had been emailing backwards and forwards. I had got the impression that, as I do with every guest that comes on the podcast, they're probably sick of hearing about me once they've done the podcast, or hearing from me once we've done the podcast. And I know that if they want to listen to the episode of the podcast, they know where to listen to it. And usually after every podcast episode has ended, there's usually it was really nice to have you on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a few minutes chat after the episode ends. I was completely unaware that this person felt this way. So here I am thinking, I wonder why this person's being so rude. And I reached out and said, I'm unaware of anything that went down, but this is a great opportunity for me to receive feedback from you. Completely unaware that this was what was going to come back from that. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad for two things. I'm glad for the fact that there was an opportunity that was presented for me to seek feedback. So I'm grateful that I have learnt to get over the fear of asking people if there's a problem. But two, and more than anything, I'm so grateful to this person for being such an open communicator and saying to me, well, you know what, since you asked, yeah, I'm fucking pissed off. I think what you did was rude, and it was not okay that after I gave you my time for this podcast, you just ghosted me. I really enjoyed our conversation. And then to find out that you didn't respect what I had done enough that you would just ghost me and have nothing to do with me was not fucking cool. And he didn't put it like that, but that's summarizing. This person was very, very polite about it. Not that swearing isn't polite, but I'm just putting it in my paraphrased words. And that was a really great eat shit moment for me, thinking, well, just another coffee person being an asshole, because that's what coffee people do, and I really was wrong. And am so glad to have been wrong in the first place, because this person was such a wonderful guest and someone who I have been singing their praises ever since then. And so to find out that this person felt this way was a moment of reflection for me, and a moment of me being able to heal a situation that I didn't know was broken. And so, we went backwards and forwards, and I couldn't apologize enough. And please know how much I respect you and how much I really valued our conversation and learnt from you. And he came back and said the same thing. And, I really learnt a lot from you, and I'm glad we learnt from each other, etc., etc. It then turned into a love fest, and we were like, well, let's put it behind us and let's move on. Let's have another conversation and catch up and see how each other are. And I was just so impressed with this person, and the level of professionalism that came from that, because what I'm used to in this industry is when I say sorry to somebody if I have misstepped, and I'm always grateful for opportunities to apologize when I feel like I've done something that hasn't quite been as professional as it should be. I never have a problem with eating shit when I have to eat shit, because it's a moment to learn from. But typically what happens when I do that is, it usually only ever happens with males, but they want to take your face and rub it in the shit as well. They don't want you to just eat shit. They want to rub your face in shit, which is humiliating and never leaves you wanting to do it, like to apologize ever again. But this was a really wonderful situation. And the reason I wanted to share it with you is because this ended up being a completely different outcome than what I initially anticipated, and could have ended up even further different to what I anticipated after I did apologize. And so I want to invite you to step in, because it's a serious amount of vulnerability that's required to step into saying I'm sorry and eating shit. But eating shit doesn't always have to taste like shit. Eating shit can be a moment of, this is awesome because I'm going to grow from this, and I'm going to show how professional I actually am, and I get to see how professional the other person is. And weirdly, very weirdly, it actually builds trust between two people who can be confrontational with each other in a very respectful way. And confrontation doesn't need to be bitchy or catty or anything like that. Confrontation can be a really healing and growth-inducing moment if it's approached maturely and with professionalism. And so I'm happy to share that experience with you, and I hope that it gives you something to think about. If you've experienced something like this and would like to share your story, please leave it in the comments below. And peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day, friends.